Hi, this is the final online lecture for EDF4100. And today we're really going to be wrapping it up, talking about where we've been, what you need to be doing for your research proposal, some of the things that you should be thinking about, and then kind of a little bit of what to look forward to for next semester. So looking back, I just wanted to quickly talk about where we've been, and I think that's important because it is a process. Research is a process, and it's never, oftentimes we think it's quite linear and systematic, which it is in some ways, but it does get messy. And I hope that some of you understand that, there's been times that you've thought about what you want to do and you thought, oh, that's not going to work, but that's a very normal part of research. And it's kind of that disequilibrium that we discuss in teaching, about how sometimes it takes feeling like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure out where I need to be going, what I need to be doing, and that's actually where the learning happens. And when you finally go, oh, I actually think I know what I want to do and how I'm going to do it, it's quite an exciting feeling, and a feeling of accomplishment. And so research in that way is quite exciting, because while the journey itself can have kind of ups and downs, particularly when you collect your data and you start looking at kind of the things that are coming out of it, it is very exciting. But with that, there's a lot of work and a lot of planning that has to happen before we can get to that point where we can actually have the data and understand it and connect it to a research question. So the first week, we talked about the purposes of research. And Sarah talked a little bit about what research is, and particularly looking at what it is for us in a fourth year unit compared to a master's and a PhD. And if you remember, there was a pre-submission video with James Russo and talking about some of the things he was thinking about. And I'm sure now, if you look back at that, while you may have watched that and thought, I don't really know what he's talking about, you now have kind of entered what we call the discourse, this community of research and this idea of teacher research, and you're starting to understand it, and there's a bit of buy-in. You kind of you're becoming part of that community, because soon you will be collecting data and you'll be talking and presenting about it. So when you're at the beginning, sometimes it seems quite daunting and you have no idea what it's about. And we talk about what research is, but you have no idea. Once you actually kind of complete this year and complete the project completely, so you actually collect the data and then you get to present it, which will be a poster presentation, which I'll briefly talk about later. It all kind of comes together. So, you might go back and look at that video and kind of see, oh, now I get it. Actually, that makes sense now. The topic 2 is on teacher inquiry, and just talking about, what is teacher research. So John Loughran talked about that, and teacher inquiry, and identifying a researchable topic. Now, hopefully you're at the point where you can now understand what is a researchable topic, what is doable in the timeframes that you have. But more importantly, this idea about teacher research, what is it? Well, teacher research is a little bit different than other research, in that the goal of teacher research is to inform your own teaching, or inform teaching and learning in general. So there's that really strong connection. And I think if you're at the point and you're looking at your question and go, well, actually, once I find out the answers to this question, or I collect the data on it, is there a strong connection to teacher research? Does it actually inform my teaching, or does it help me as a teacher understand this particular topic in a way that will actually improve my teaching? So I think that's an important thing to remember, particularly now as you begin writing your research proposal. Topic 3 was research narrative, and Louise talked about a couple of things, but the research narrative in general is in regards to the assignment, but also looking at research questions and that link between the topic and the research question and the aim. And also thinking about how to create this narrative and the rationale. Topic 4 was looking at, Sarah was looking at research designs, but she primarily looked at quantitative design. And because she's a quantitative researcher, we're very lucky to be able to kind of learn more about quantitative research, and even looking at it from the perspective of situ and what that data gives us and so on. Topic 5, I briefly talked about qualitative research design, and some of the the different types of qualitative research, such as ethnography or case studies, and then looking at different data collection techniques that we might use both quantitatively and qualitatively. Topic 6 was informed consent. So we looked at writing explanatory statements, consent, and assent forms. And basically, what are some of the ethical and practical considerations in regards to informed consent? And then last week was topic 7, which was action research. So just exploring this idea of action research, which is a qualitative design, but what it is and how it can be used to inform teaching and learning. So I hope that you can see that we've been trying to kind of help you through this journey. And you can look back and see, okay, now this is all making sense. Now I'm understanding how this all works and kind of the options I have in regards to designing my research project. So we're going to talk about your research proposal. Now, first of all, I want to say that if you have not looked at Sarah's video, the online explanation, please do, because it's very thorough and it gives a lot of explanation. So please, before you ask your tutors questions about the assignment, please just have a look at that, that video, because I think it will answer a lot of your questions. But in general, what is a research proposal? It's a lot of things, and it depends what the context is, because different proposals are different for what you would do for a PhD and so on. But these are general things that I've considered that need to be discussed in regards to what a research proposal is. So number 1, it describes your research plan at the moment. So the idea about research is that it changes. Sometimes, you may go to your placement school to collect data with the idea that you're going to survey a whole bunch of teachers, and then nobody actually answers your survey. So in some ways you need to have kind of ideas, kind of or contingency plans to consider other ways that you might still answer your question. Some of you will have written on a topic for assessment task 1 in your research narrative, and then change quite a bit of it because now you have a better understanding of where you want to go. And so your understanding from when you wrote your first assignment to this assignment may be very different. And so that research plan is not in stone, but when we're looking at a research proposal, we want to know that you do have a plan, that you do understand the plan, and you've written this and described it accurately. Number 2, it demonstrates your understanding of the relationship between your topic, aim, question or questions, and research methods. So I think sometimes it's difficult for some to realize that all of these feed into one another and they're all very connected. So your topic, aim, question, and research method should all be aligned, and your method should be specifically designed to actually answer your question or questions. And with that point about questions, sometimes it's easy to just have one question, particularly for the scope of this research project, because when you have too many, you have the requirement to answer all of them and to answer them well. So sometimes it's best to just have one question and not, some students are putting questions and then sub-questions, maybe trying to keep those sub-questions for possible topics to discuss in interviews or surveys if you're doing qualitative, but keeping to a main general question. But there should be a link, and you should be able to explain the relationship between the topic, aim, question, and your methods. They should be all aligned. Third, a research proposal should demonstrate a strong understanding of research concepts and terminology. So we've, things like qualitative and quantitative, and these concepts need to be not just discussed in one sentence, but there needs to be some kind of demonstration of understanding of these concepts and how it links to your research project. The last thing, and again, there could be many, but these are just the ones that I thought were important to discuss. The fourth is to demonstrate an understanding of the practical and ethical considerations involved in teacher research. So, we've talked a lot about that in class, particularly in topic 6, and you were expected to begin discussing this in your first assignment. But it's very important because, going back to that first one, you're describing a plan. And in that plan, you do have to consider both the practical and the ethical, and very explicitly. And you should be able to connect this. And, in both your understanding of the research concepts and terminology, and then also that practical and ethical consideration, you should be able to connect this to outside sources. So whether it's your textbook or another kind of research methods book, or an article that you read, you should be able to link those and be able to show that these aren't just things that you've thrown out of the air, but these considerations are things that the research community talks about and are aware of that we need to consider when we do research. All right, so now I'm just going to briefly go through the actual assignment. And again, part of this will be a repeat because Sarah has done this in the online explanation, but just a few things to kind of discuss. And sometimes, we talk about, seeing things from different perspectives. This is kind of looking at it, I guess, from some different perspectives. So the introduction, that's really your first assignment opening, I guess, that you need to write and put in feedback. So don't just copy and paste all of the issues that were in there. If you've been given feedback, do put that in there. And again, some of you may be actually looking and going, actually, I don't think this question is what I really want to ask, so I need to kind of reword it. So it's your topic, aim, and questions, and your rationale. So, some people had a very personal story, or it was something that they observed on placement. Others were looking at statistics and linking maybe statistics in a particular area, like the number of students who have autism in primary schools, in addition to their own experience on placement. So this rationale then kind of develops, why it's important, both personally, professionally, and to the community, I guess. Now, development of ideas. This is very similar to what you did in the first assignment, but it's different articles. I say 3 peer-reviewed articles. I think it's 3 to 5, but if you choose to do more, you're not giving as much depth, so you need to ensure that you don't try to do too many and not have enough depth. So I'd start with 3, and then if you do need to, kind of up the word count, then you may put another article, but start with 3. Now that's peer-reviewed. Make sure you know what peer-reviewed means. It's literally something that you can tick in the search feature, and then it's peer-reviewed. It shows that, again, part of this research community, it's something that we say, yes, this is proper research and there's some validity in it. It's been reviewed by other people, other experts, so it's okay. It should be related, and this is what's different between this one and the other one, the other assignment, is that while the other one was related on your topic, it doesn't have to be related to your topic, but it does need to be related to your research design and data collection and or data collection techniques. So if this person is using interviews and you're planning to use interviews, you might actually discuss that. But before you do that, talk about the actual techniques, you still need to summarize that article. So talking about who are the participants and the aim and the question and the research design, and even part of the findings, because this is the thing, is that the research, it's a whole, like there's all these different components, but it all makes one whole kind of big picture. So to understand why that researcher used interviews, you have to understand how many participants. I mean, if they had 150 participants, they probably wouldn't be interviewing all 150 participants. So you have to understand those details of their research design and their research plan to then be able to understand why they used a particular techniques, or if they, why they use qualitative and not quantitative. So these are things that you need to discuss. So it's not just talking about this person uses interviews and that's how. You still need to give those, summary of the details about the broader kind of research project. Methodology, and this is one of the big things, and we talk about research paradigm, and in the next slide I'll talk a bit more about paradigms because we haven't really discussed it, and we've, Sarah, Louise, and I have kind of talked about it because it's a very it's a tricky concept to discuss, and so I will try my best to do it, but you do need to kind of understand what that means and talk about a research paradigm. You have research design, data collection techniques, but then here's the thing is that methodology section, yes, you're talking about those three things, but you need to connect them together. It's one thing to write one sentence to say this is the research paradigm, and then another one, this is the research design, but that's not the point. It's about making those links. So so why are you using those techniques? And what are the how will these work together, and so on. So making deep connections and with the research concepts. So it's one thing to say that this is a qualitative research design, but what does that mean? What is qualitative? So going kind of that next step, and not just taking these kind of research concepts and putting it on the page, but actually being able to understand what they are, why you're using them, and how you will use them to actually answer your research question. All right, so research paradigm. I'm not going to go into too much about this, but the fear was that when you Google research paradigm, you might get very different answers. And I'll give you some background on that, but your textbook talks about paradigms in terms of qualitative and quantitative. And really for the purpose of a fourth year, this particular research project, that's what we expect. We expect you to understand the difference between those and being able to understand and situate your own research within one of those paradigms. But if you Google research paradigm, it may not be qualitative and quantitative that comes up. It may be other things. And that's why I wanted to kind of alert you to this so you can kind of understand and make some connections there. And this is the thing, is within the field of academics and researchers, there is some consistency, but then there's also those who use paradigm very differently. So just be aware that sometimes, particularly in research, that people use terms and use them slightly differently. So there can be some confusion. So it was argued that Thomas Kuhn was in 1962, so obviously a while ago. He was the first one to kind of start talking about paradigms, and he, or to coin that phrase in regards to research, and he was saying that a paradigm is a set of common beliefs and agreements about how problems should be understood and investigated. So I'll just say that one more time. A paradigm is a set of common beliefs and agreements about how problems should be understood and investigated. So obviously this is kind of saying if you're situated within a particular paradigm, you, along with other people who sit within this paradigm, believe and agree on how problems should be understood and investigated. So it's almost kind of an outlook on how problems should be solved and looked at, or it's a worldview, it's a viewpoint. So I'll kind of discuss this very briefly here. So many qualitative, and I'm simplifying this, so if you look, there are lots of different paradigms, but I'm just going to talk about three because the nature of them being quite simplistic for what we're doing. So many qualitative research designs come from an interpretivist paradigm. So it's the idea that there's no single truth or reality, thus it needs to be interpreted. So the idea is that my reality may be different from your reality. And so we need to understand all of these things that exist and then interpret them. So you can see that that makes sense in regards to, if I'm the kind of person who thinks that I would probably be drawn to qualitative research designs, because a lot of qualitative research designs are looking at perspectives. They're trying to get people's, they're interviewing or surveying and trying to get people's different perspectives on what they think is true about a particular topic. Now, another paradigm, so many quantitative, and when I say many, so this is the thing, is there's lots of paradigms, so I'm simplifying this, but many quantitative research designs come from a positivist paradigm, okay? So a positivist paradigm kind of looks at things and saying there is a single truth or reality, a bit more black and white, and that things can be measured and known. So obviously people within this paradigm would think actually quantitative makes sense because there's an answer, there's a number, it can be quantified, it can be known, where an interpretivist view is the idea that there's all these different perspectives, but there's no real true one answer. It may be, we can interpret some general kind of patterns or ideas, but these are interpreted. It's not just a single, yes, this is the truth, this is the number, this is how it is. So you can see that these are, very different kind of views, and then that's why they use very different types of designs. So where does mixed methods end up? So we could say, in mixed methods, and Sarah mentions this in the online video or explanation, that it's kind of, quantitative and qualitative are supposed to be these two different paradigms. So they're two different views of looking at things. So how do you then merge them? How do you actually have both? So a lot of people think with mixed methods, because it's a mixture, it can be described as a pragmatic paradigm. So it's this idea that reality is negotiated and renegotiated, but the focus is on what works. So saying, I want this particular data, and I kind of want it from this perspective. I want what's known, I want it to be measured, but I'm going to use what works and not necessarily trying to define it by, either just a qualitative interpretivist view or just a positivist quantitative view. But pragmatic is that, well, I'm going to use this because it works, and it kind of, it's a mixture of both, but it works for what I want to do, and not so much based on, no, we just fit within this particular one paradigm, but it's kind of a mixture. So hopefully I haven't completely confused you. So here's kind of an idea for mapping your methodology, okay? Now, but this is the thing, is that if you don't understand this idea of interpretivism, positivism, and pragmatism, don't use it. Just stick to qualitative and quantitative and mixed methods as a paradigm. But if you want to go that extra step, and you want to kind of, look more into this kind of idea of paradigm, this is just this is what I was talking about, that an interpretivist view looks at kind of qualitative, and then but they're all aligned. They all align together. So you wouldn't be using tests or measurement for this particular design because it doesn't fit within, it's all aligned. So this is just kind of an idea, and this might be some way for you to kind of map and look at yours. Now I've put things in like case study or quasi-experimental. Now that's, if you look at the textbook, there's actually a page, and I'm going to try to find it right now. It's in Curvin's book on page 74, and it talks about research designs like case study, ethnography, descriptive, correlational, and so on. And I think that's page 74 in your textbook. And I think that's quite helpful to kind of look at. But the problem is that particularly for, like, let's look at qualitative. You can't do an ethnography because you don't have enough time. Action research, you're not going to be able to do all the cycles because there's not enough time. And I guess you could call it a case study because so it's not so much like you have to have those specific sorts of things in there. But more importantly is that you can understand why you're using things. Don't just write a sentence saying, this is a qualitative case study, and that's it. You need to explain why it is a qualitative case study. So it's going to require some outside reading. Okay, reflection. Is it doable, practical, ethical? These are things that we discuss in the tutorials. It's things that you've read in your books. Do I need an explanatory statement and concept form, and why? And, but that's the thing, is why. If you're using those, why do you need to use them? Issues of reliability, validity. These are things that we talked in the first week. So things to kind of look back at. Are your interviews or are your surveys reliable? Why are they valid? Are they asking? Are these questions valid questions to ask? Will they help you answer your overall research question? What might I need to consider or change, problem solve? Now, this is the thing about research, is that there will always be limitations. There will always be things that don't necessarily work out, like given that you only have a short time in your placement. So what are things that you need to consider? Probably timeframes. And then how will you analyze the data? So while you will explore this more in second semester, you need to still start thinking about how you might analyze it. And this is the information that you're probably getting from those articles and how they actually analyze the data. Finally, you might need an appendix or appendices. So things like your data collection instruments. So if you have survey interview questions, you need to put them in there. Observation checklists, self-reflection points, so on. And also any explanatory statement, consent, or assent forms. If you are unsure, but you're unsure if you need those forms, just fill them out, have them ready just in case. Now, I'll leave this with just kind of discussing where you're going for next semester. So the two assignments, the first one is a literature review. And so that's just looking at your topic a bit more and looking at what, you'll already have some articles that you've done in this semester, and you can draw from those, but it's really kind of looking at the topic and creating that literature review. And then at some point in time, you're going to be collecting your data, and you'll need to obviously then analyze it, however you've decided in this, to analyze it. And then your last assignment is a poster presentation. So if you don't know what a poster presentation, have a look, but a lot of times in research we have poster presentation sessions where people have a poster, and it basically has things like their topic and their aim and their research questions and their methods that they use, and then looking at their findings, and it's just basically a visual representation, but there's obviously quite a bit of writing in there too to talk about their research project, and that will be your end project for EDF4100, which you will find out much more about when you actually take the unit. All right, on behalf of the EDF4100 team, all of the amazing tutors, and Louise and Sarah, we really have enjoyed this. We hope that by the end of this you actually really like research, and I hope that you see that it's not just another thing that you have to do, but I hope that you find yourself in it, and you find something that interests you, and you find, actually, I can systematically look at ways to improve my own teaching and to explore ideas, to kind of to engage myself in the teaching and learning process. So we hope that this has kind of opened your eyes to that. Some of you will take this and go, I'm going to be in the classroom and I'm going to use these ways to look at problems in my classrooms, or issues, or things that I want to explore. Others of you might go, actually, I really like research. I really want to go on to a master's or PhD. So wherever you decide to take this unit and the next unit, we hope that you can actually see the value of research, not only for the community, but for yourself and for your students. Have a lovely break, and all the best as you finish off your research proposals.